Parshas Pinchas begins. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron a Kohen, and he's given the Brisi Kunas Olam. And Chazal tell us that that Pinchas zu Eliyahu, that Pinchas never died, whatever that means exactly, he became Eliyahu. And in fact, we have connections, as we mentioned last time, with Kanas. They're both zealots. However, the Gemara in Bava Metzia on the Kuf Yud Daled Amud Beis 114b finds Eliyahu Hanavi in the Beis HaKfaros, hanging out there in the cemetery. And someone said, "What are you doing? Aren't you a Kohen? How could you be in a cemetery?" So we'll discuss that issue of a little bit of a Kohen being in a non-Jewish cemetery. In general, basically a Kohen, going to a hospital, whether it's going as a patient or going as a visitor. We'll see, at least we'll start the topic tonight. We'll see how far we get. So there's three different types of tumah. There's tumas maga, is actually touching the body, that's prohibited. Again, it goes back to Parshas Emor, Emor Kohanim b'nei Aaron. There's a biblical prohibition for a Kohen to come in contact with a corpse. And of course, with the exception of the 7 relatives, then he might have an obligation to do the burial and make sure that the relatives who you're obligated to bury. But barring that, a Kohen cannot come in contact with the dead. So you can't touch the dead, masa, move it, lift it up. And there's an issur also of tumas ohel, being in the same room, being under the same roof as a dead. So the issue is, let's start off with someone who's sick. Again, if you're a cholesh yesh bo sakana, if you're someone who's sick, it's a life-threatening situation. So of course, even if pikuach nefesh, your life supersedes the biblical prohibition, therefore you go. But we're not talking about, that's obvious. But let's say you're a cholesh she'ein bo sakana, you're not in danger, but you have to you need a blood test, you got to do some procedure. So what about a Kohen who's not an emergency? It's not even a cholesh she'ein bo sakana, or maybe it is. Is he permitted to go to a hospital? So the issue is, there's no problem going to a hospital. The issue is there are dead bodies in the hospital. There's nothing wrong with the hospital. But the problem is there are dead bodies in the hospital, and usually there's like a morgue underneath where they usually keep the bodies. So therefore this question could be different if you're in North America. First of all, within North America, it could be different where you're living, versus Eretz Yisrael. So a key factor is going to be, being in Hamilton, that's a big pro. Because in Hamilton, our working assumption is that there are many more non-Jews than Jews in Hamilton. And perhaps in Toronto also, depending on, I don't know if there's a specific hospital. I know like in Brooklyn, Maimonides Hospital, I would guess there's probably more Jews than non-Jews. And if you live in Israel, there's also an issue, so we'll come back to that as well. But let's make the assumption we're talking about a place in North America where the majority of people are non-Jews. So does it make a difference? So that's the Gemara in Kuf Yud Beis in Bava Metzia. They asked Eliyahu Hanavi, what are you doing in the Beis HaKfaros? So he said, didn't you learn the sugya? Rav Shimon he quotes Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says that only Jews are considered Adam. He quotes a different pasuk, and basically he says, Kivrei Akum Eino Metamim. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's opinion is, a non-Jewish cemetery, there is no tumas ohel. We're not talking about actually touching it, but in terms of being above it. So the opinion of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is Kivrei Akum Eino Metamim. It's a machlokas among the Tanaim in the Gemara, which is also a machlokas harishonim. The Rambam paskins, like Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, Kivrei Akum Eino Metamim. Being in a kever of a non-Jew, a kever of non-Jews is not a problem. Tosfos disagrees and says Kivrei Akum are metamim. So it's a machlokas in the Gemara, machlokas in the Rishonim. How do we paskin in Shulchan Aruch? How do we paskin in Shulchan Aruch? Can a Kohen go into a cemetery of non-Jews? So the Shulchan Aruch passage in Yeredeya, it's a very interesting language. Nachon lehizaher. It's proper to be careful that a Kohen should not enter the cemetery of non-Jews. So, what would you say from that language? Nachon lehizaher. I don't think the Shulchan Aruch was afraid of using words. Is he passing like the Rambam, or is he passing like Tosfos? The Rambam says it's permitted. Tosfos says it's us. So clearly the Shulchan Aruch knows it's a machlokas arishonim, but it seems to me, the way I understand the Shulchan Aruch is basically saying, Me'ikir hadin, we passing like the Rambam. We passing like the Rambam that it's permitted to go in, but it's best not to, since we're dealing with a biblical prohibition, and therefore we should be choshesh v'shitas Tosfos. So he says, best not to, but that's important to know. It's between better not to and being usher. There's a big difference between the two. So better not to for no reason, but if we could come up with a good reason, so then maybe it's not better not to anymore. That's what it's right. So if we're talking about visiting some museum which has dead bodies and assumingly non-Jews, so then better not to, so there's no need per se to go and, maybe if it's your job, this and that, we could come up with this. But generally speaking, going for some elective museum, best not to. It's probably a good idea for a Kohen not to go in. But if a Kohen wants to go to a hospital to get he's sick and to get a blood test or other needs, so then better not to for no reason, but perhaps for a tzarach, we really passing like the Rambam, and therefore it would be okay for a Kohen to go to a hospital if he has to go to see his doctor or get some type of checkup. So that's number one. We have a couple of things we could relate. So factor number one is, Vayikra Edin, we seem to passing like the Rambam. Again, we're not talking about touching, we're only talking about tumas ohel, so the bodies are presumably down in the morgue, in the basement, so we're not talking about being in the same ohel. So number one, the first leniency is we have the Rambam's opinion. Now we add a couple more. Second thing is, even if you assume we passing like Tosfos, even if you want to tell me we passing like Tosfos, that there's a biblical prohibition that applies also to tumas ohel to a non-Jew. However, the shach is medayik from the lashon and the machaber and Shulchan Aruch. What's the case in the Shulchan Aruch? The case is that basically, let's say you have a roommate, you're in the same room, and let's say there are a couple people in the room. Let's say someone dies in that room, and there's a Kohen in that room. And he's sleeping. The Kohen doesn't know. So they talk about what should you tell. Should you tell them?
And it's a Jew that died.
Yeah, no.
Does it matter in this case?
No, in this case, even let's assume right. But let's assume. But the point being is, the case is that the Kohen isn't clothed, like he's sleeping, naked or close to naked. So if you tell the Kohen there's a dead body in the room, so then then this issue is going to run out naked and covered abrios. They say, don't tell him what happened. Tell him, by the way, get up, let's go take a walk, let's go do something, and then you give him a chance to get dressed.
Mm-hmm.
But that issue is in the same room. However, the Shach points out, when is it an issue of a deraisa, assuming there is a deraisa at all, being in the same room? Again, the deraisa, that'd even be like, for it could be a Jew in the same room. But the Shach writes, but if you're in a different room, but you're just in the same building, that's only a rabbinical prohibition. Even if you want to assume that the halacha applies to a Jew and non-Jew alike, but that's only in the same room. But if the morgue's not in the same room, so then it's only a d'Rabbanan. So in a d'Rabbanan, for medical issues, we permit you to do we permit you to violate a rabbinical law, like we find in the Gemara. The Gemara has a case of tumas beis hapras. To make a long story short, basically it's a field where it used to be a dead body, and basically it's a d'Rabbanan. It's a rabbinical prohibition to go here for a Kohen. But the halacha is, the Gemara says, if you're going to do a mitzvah, you want to get married or you're visiting a Rabbi, we permit you to violate the rabbinical prohibition for a good purpose, for a mitzvah. Same thing here, for a Kohen to go for a checkup in the hospital, that's a good reason. So therefore, number one is we have that maybe it's not an issue, because we're assuming it's rove non-Jews, and even if you want to be telling me it is an issue, but that's only if it's in the same room, and you're not going to be in the same room. That's the second factor in the decision. Then they bring down a third factor. The third factor is the Rabbi. Even though we don't normally pass them like the Rabbi, but poskim throw this in just to know it's out there. The Rabbi's opinion is that, well, we all agree to the first part of the statement. Kohanim bisman, all the Kohanim today are tamei, because you can't help it, you come in contact. However, the Rambam writes, so therefore you'll say, well, I'm tamei anyway, big deal, let me come in contact with the dead. No, so the Rambam writes, no, every time a Kohen does it, it's a separate law, it's a separate prohibition. That's the Rambam's opinion. The Ravid writes, he has an interesting lashon, but he writes, Kohanim bisman hazeh are all tamei meis, and therefore ve'einu of od chiyav tuma. And the Ravid says, and therefore they're tamei anyway, and therefore he disagrees with the Rambam, and therefore there's no difference anymore. It's like a Kohen there's a Rabbeinu Tam that if you became, there is a halacha that at that moment you're tamei, you're still touching the dead. You can still go around and touch other dead, the tomb hasn't left you. So whatever the Ravid's opinion is, that at least according to the way the Mishnah Lamelech learns the Ravid, that since Bisman Hazeh, all the Kohanim are tamei anyway, it doesn't make a difference anymore. There's no more additional prohibition. Again, we don't assume, number one, many assume the Ravid holds no, there is a prohibition. He just says there's no chiyuv makis on it, but again, but they want to find three kulas here, because number one is maybe we're passing like the Rambam, so if you assume it's in an area with mostly non-Jews, you could go in, and even if you want to be machmer like Tosfos, but it's not in the same room, so it's only a din d'Rabbanan. We see for medical need a din d'Rabbanan is okay, and then thirdly, you have the Ravid's opinion that maybe a Kohen doesn't have to worry at all today. Again, we don't necessarily take each one by itself, but together all three, and that's why the poskim say it's not a problem for a Kohen who has to go in for a medical need. Certainly a life-threatening, nothing to talk about. Even if it's not life-threatening, he doesn't have to worry about the issue because of these three factors. Mm-hmm. What about if you're in Israel where you don't have that main issue of, you can't assume it's mostly non-Jews, or you're in Maimonides hospitals where I'm assuming it's more Jews. So some point out that they still want to be lenient, because number one is we still have the other two. Number one is they want to take the shach. The shach still, even for a Jew, if you're in a different room, it's still only a d'Rabbanan. Mm-hmm. And then you still have that right, because some want to say 2 out of the 3. So then that raises a discussion. There's more room to discuss, but there are poskim who are mekel, the Shari B'Tzim B'Halacha, he's still mater, and also Rav Eliezer Waldenberg, he wants to be mater in Eretz Yisrael even, because he says the shach, like we said, the Ravid's opinion, and he quotes also Rabbeinu Tam, that on the day the Kohen became tamei, there's no additional problem. He says today we view the Kohanim, Rabbeinu Tam's opinion is, every day it's like, as long as you're in a perpetual state of Tumah, every day it's like the first day, and therefore he's matir even in an Israeli hospital. Because he says also today we have electric doors, so it's set up, especially in Shari Tzedek, it's set up where it's not even a problem for a Kohen to walk in. But he says today with electric doors, it's very rare to find that the doors are going to be open. But some say don't hang out in the hallways because in case a dead body's coming by. But today with electric doors, it's hard. They're going to be in the same room. So
aren't you under the same roof though?
No, right. So but then it's only the shach.
Okay.
So really, it's only a d'Rabbanan. We want to keep away the rice. If the dead body's wheeling, then you're one in. So therefore he says, and also they have in Charitek, they have different exits, so they deal. So in that hospital, I think to have it's Kohen proof anyway. It doesn't, one door doesn't open until the other door closes. They have it all set up there, not just for Kohana, but in terms of that. So, so therefore, so again, in a place where it's mostly non-Jews, just about all the poskim are making. Even in different places, you find it's less people, but there's definitely yesh lismach even for a Kohen who has to go to a hospital in Israel. And now we find basically to rely on the shach, that it's only a drabanan, and the Rabbi Shita. So the poskim are meko. There's one more point regarding visiting. So Rav Moshe Feinstein happens to have, he seems to be machmir. Even he wants to say that it's one thing if you're going in for your sick, but bikar cholam, albeit it's a big mitzvah. So he has some type of distinction that he says that when it comes to family, he says you could go in, but friends, he doesn't want to say it so much. And other poskim say no, even friends, it's a big enough syrup, you could go in. And they have another type of head that they throw out. There's a halacha we have by Tuma, that there's a Xeris HaKasav, it says, Savik Tuma Bereshus HaRabim, there's a doubt regarding the Tuma, if it's in a public place, Tahar, if it's in a private place, Tameh. So a hospital is at a public place or a private place. So in terms of carrying on Shabbos, it's a private place. But in terms of Tuma, it's public access. So there's another heter we don't know, Savik Tuma Bereshus HaRabim, and that's another heter they bring out. It's a suburb. We don't know if it's a Jew and non-Jew in here, or if it's a non-Jew, whether it's a Savik Tuma. That's another sift to be makel in terms of a Kohen going into the hospital. So basically, to conclude, being in a non-Jewish area, basically, to go in as for your own medical need, just based on those factors, you have the Machlokas, Rambam, and Tosfos to be, and you have the Shach and the Ravid. Rav Moshe is a little more machmir by Bikar Cholam, but other poskim say even a good friend, because the Bikar Cholam could be, in a sense, it could be saving someone's life if someone, keeping a person company and that. So many people are not makel on that, but they say it is an element of Pikuach Nefesh, not the immediate, if you don't come, he's going to die, but there's the psychological factor as well. Yeah. Let me just conclude that the Shulchan Aruch says that it's nachol lizar, it's best for a Kohen not to go to a non-Jewish cemetery, so that seems to pass like the Rambam. To those who pass like Tosfos say, how do they answer up the Shulchan Aruch? So someone says, you know why the Shulchan Aruch says it's better not to go in? No, they agree, that, or someone would say, no, really, someone would say the Shulchan Aruch passes like the Rambam completely, that it's mutter to go in. You know what the concern is? Unfortunately, it's not a new problem, a Jewish apostate. Unfortunately, there are many Jews buried in non-Jewish cemeteries. So that's the concern. Of course, we pass them like the Rambam.
Someone who's halachically Jewish that doesn't know.
Exactly. So how you learn the Shulchan Aruch, or if he knows and doesn't care. So that's a big shot. How you learn the Shulchan Aruch? What's this hedging here? Because I want to say, the Yikar Adin like Tosfos like the Rambam, but he's choshesh, so don't be so quick to even go in. And I'm saying no, he's passing like the Rambam completely. His concern is that there might be Jews in there, so that's different ways. So that's dependent on how you learn the Shulchan Aruch, would be how you deal with many of these issues. But but we'll deal with more of those issues. But that's these are some of the key principles that come up in terms of the issue. Again, is we're not talking about touching the dead. That's something else. But being in the same room. So then we have this Machlokas, Rambam, and Tosfos, whether you could be can I be in the same room? According to the Rabbi, you could be in the same room as a non-Jewish corpse. We'll have to get into touching the corpse. That runs into a different issue. And then you have the shach being in a different room. Many times you're in a different room. That's an issue d'Rabbanan. And you have the Rabbi Shita that says it's not a problem today. So all these factors, and there are many more. And we have Safek Tum, Rishus HaRabim, we'll get into at another show. That's based on the tradition that Pinchas zu Eliyahu, and therefore Eliyahu was a Kohen, and that's what the Gemara of Messiah says, Kuf Yudah, what were you doing in the Sefer? So he says, what do you talk? Don't you know the halacha? We paskin, but he didn't say like the Rambam, he was before the Rambam. Don't you know we paskin, Kivrei Alkamein or Matama? That's the way with Eliyahu. That's the way Eliyahu paskin, away the Kohen to the simple reading of the Gemara. Alright, so what does Tosas do with that Gemara then? Tosas says no, Eliyahu wasn't really answering seriously, he was just pushing off the guy. He really also paskin, but he had another reason why he had to be in there. That will go into, that's a Tosas and Kuf Yudah, he goes into why Eliyahu Navi was in it, so we'll have to get into that.
Yeah, I'd love to continue that.
Yeah, and why Eliyahu was able to, the same Gemara over there, based on why how Eliyahu was able to Tchias HaMesim on the dead, on the son. That's Tosas' question there. We'll continue this another time, next week, the week after.
Okay.